Hey guys, so yesterday we learned about the US Legislature, which are the people who make the laws for the United States. Once again, the job of the legislature is to make what? The legislature is also called the Congress and is split into two parts, the House of Representatives and the Senate, as we learned yesterday. The Senate only has 100 people and only two people per state. So the biggest state, like California, has the same two senators as the smallest state, like Rhode Island. In the House of Representatives, there are 435 people, and the number of representatives your state gets is based on a state's population. So a state with a very big population like New York would get a lot more votes than a state with a small population like Rhode Island. Where would a big state get more votes? In the Senate or the House? So there's a reason it was this way. And it is because when the Constitution was being written, there were only 13 states. And some of those 13 states, like Virginia, had a very big population. Others of those 13 states, like New Hampshire, had a very small population. The big states, like Virginia, said that representation, the number of votes people should get in Congress, should be based on population. So a big state like Virginia would get more, and a small state like Rhode Island would get less. The small states like New Jersey, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire got together and said they didn't think that was fair. They thought everyone should get the same amount of representatives no matter how many people lived in their state, no matter what their state's population was. So that meant a big state with a lot of population like New York would get the same amount of votes as a little state with only a little bit of population like Connecticut. Big states said this was unfair because they had bigger populations, so they should have more votes. Why do you think the larger states wanted representation in the legislature to be based on population? So there was one other thing coming into play here, and this was slavery. States in the North and the South could not agree on how slaves should be counted in the population. So they made an agreement. They said that, all right, we'll have two parts of Congress. In the Senate, your population doesn't matter. In the House of Representatives, the number of votes you get is based on your population, just like we saw yesterday. But for your population, they had to decide, do we count just free people or do we count slaves toward the population too? The people in the South who owned more slaves said, well, slaves should count towards our population. And the people in the North who didn't own slaves said, well, that's great. Are you going to let the slaves vote? And the people in the South said, no, we will not let the slaves vote. So the people in the North asked them, if the slaves cannot vote, why should they count towards your population? The two sides went back and forth with states in the North like Pennsylvania and New York saying you can't count slaves in your population. States in the South like Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina said you should be able to. They wanted to count slaves because then they would have more power. The people in the North, some of them, like the people in Pennsylvania, thought slavery was just wrong. And the others who didn't care still didn't want the South to have more power. So they made a compromise called the Three-Fifths Compromise. This said that for every five enslaved people in the South, they would count as three people for the population. So The southern states would get 3 extra votes for every 5 enslaved people. Do you think this 3/5 compromise is fair for everybody? For the North, for the South, and for the enslaved people? Why or why not? All right, that's it for today. We will come back tomorrow, and tomorrow we are going to look at how bills are actually passed in the legislature, okay? Have a good day. I'll talk to you guys back then.